My name is Vince Mastro. I'm the director of 401k Specialists, which is powered by Thiessen Duker Modern Wealth Management, which most of you know. You probably have an advisor with Thiessen Duker Modern Wealth Management. That's why you're here today. You're probably wondering, well, why is the 401k division going to talk about this subject, long-term care? Well, believe it or not, I've been helping folks for 40 years. This is my 40th year in the financial service industry. And when I started out, it was in the mid 80s, 1985. I was basically help people with their Medicare. So I did in the real estate business with my father-in-law, and got a brother-in-law doing insurance. He goes, "You should get your license. You'll be pretty good at this. Working with seniors and helping them with their health care." I said, I put them off. Finally, I went and got my license. It was a lot easier back then to get your license. I went in there, passed the test, and you started training a little bit, still doing my real estate. And I just really connected with seniors. I really enjoyed talking to them about their Medicare, kind of what Medicare would do for them, what it would do for them. And then we had what we call Medicare supplements that we helped them with. And I really liked it so much and did pretty well that I ended up letting my real estate license go and just going full time. And I had Mastro Insurance Services. And so I built up a pretty substantial Medicare supplement business, which led into doing other things. But what I learned in those years that I was just focusing on Medicare, because I was very service oriented, and I helped my clients with all their claims and help them with their overall health insurance planning. I realized that Medicare was great. It covered the hospital and the doctors really well. But when it came time when they needed some help, they just started getting older, and they had some type of illness or accident, and they needed some people to help them come in. I really didn't even know what long-term care was. All of a sudden, these people were having to take money out of their savings account. They didn't have the money to pay for this care. And so I really started researching, and I realized there was, that really what we were talking about is long-term care, and specifically custodial care. So usually if I ask everybody here, what's the first thing that comes in your mind when you hear long-term care? Throw out some answers. What's the first thing that comes in your mind?
Custodial care, honestly, facilities.
So most people think of a nursing home. They think long-term care. People are more educated now. In it, but back then it was a nursing home.
Exactly.
Okay, but here's the thing. I don't know anybody that has a picture on their wall of their favorite nursing home and they can't wait to go, right? And so really what long-term care is, it's just a good point in your life where you help the activities of daily living. And what that is maintaining continence, transferring from the bed to the chair, showering, going to the bathroom, dressing, and eating. Those are the 6 activities of daily living. And so once you need some help in those activities of daily living, that's what you usually have to have somebody help you. Also, another big part of long-term care is if you just have cognitive impairment. It's actually the largest reason that people need help is they start getting forgetful, whether it's senile dementia or Alzheimer's. And really that's really probably one of the bigger problems, because a lot of times people don't really have physical problems as much, but they need to be reminded to do certain things, those activities. So as I saw clients go through this problem, I researched insurance. And back then, there really wasn't any really good insurance to cover long-term care. Okay. But I realized that there was this thing called the baby boomers, which I was one. And that and I read that they were developing products and it was going to be a focus. And the government was really going to try to make it more affordable and definitely define what long-term care insurance was so that people felt good about it. And if they bought it, they would be confident that the policy would pay for their care. So I decided I was really going to start focusing on long-term care and learn about it. And so there was a company, now I'm in the early 90s, called John Hancock, that had a really good long-term care policy. I was at a softball game for one of my daughters, and sitting next to me was this gentleman whose daughter was playing on the same team. And come to find out as we're talking, he's the general agent for John Hancock. So we're he's a good recruiter. He's talking to me. I tell him what I do, and his eyes get big, and he goes, "You need to come work for me. We're all life insurance and investment guys. We have this great long-term care product, and we don't know anything about it." So after a little talking, I ended up closing Mastro Insurance Services, and I became a manager at John Hancock, and I was there for 14 years. And so what I did is I recruited and trained, and I helped a lot of families with their long-term care. So now a little history on long-term care insurance. In 1996, there was what's called the Kennedy Castlebaum Act. It was a legislation that what it did is it put a magnifying glass on long-term care insurance. It told insurance companies, if you're going to offer long-term care insurance, you have to include all these different benefits. And most importantly, these are the benefit triggers. Now I mentioned the 6 activities of daily living. Well, they said that if people need help, and it's you need help at least for the next 90 days. They call it severe. In the next 90 days, then you have to pay the claim. Or if they have a cognitive impairment, automatically they qualify. And if you offer that and they're on claim, all the benefits are tax-free. It used to be cloudy. It wasn't for sure if the benefits were going to be tax-free. But now it was going to be tax-free. So what happened is a bunch of companies, John Hancock was a major company that was right in there. They had a good policy. They covered custodial care. They had a good policy. We were already selling that in the early 90s. But some of the companies out there didn't have those provisions. What they would say is, okay, we're going to cover your care, but you have to have skilled nursing care for 6 months before they're going to pay custodial care. Well, here's the thing. Medicare is never going to let somebody have skilled nursing for 6 months. It's not going to ever happen. So consequently, a lot of those policies would never pay. But as of 1996, the policies became extremely usable. And, and then also a thing called PERS here in California, which for all the state employees and teachers, they came up with their own long-term care program, which again, put a lot of people thinking about insurance. And so that helped us because then people won't compare, we would compare, and if they felt ours was better, they covered. So I say all that because the long-term care industry in the late 90s was it was growing. Still, very few people have long-term care insurance. It's very few people. The people that bought it, the traditional long-term care insurance, because it ended up being so usable. I mean, claims. I used to help people with claims every week. There was claims. These insurance companies didn't know how to price their product. So long-term care insurance, the type of insurance we sold then was not guaranteed. The premium. And so they could go back to the state and they could raise the premiums. So it caused a lot of, still today, I help people with choices on reducing benefits with long-term care insurance. So what's happened since then, and I'm going to get into that later. I'm going to turn this over to Megan here in a minute. And talk about what resources we have to help you from Valley Caregiver Resources. But I wanted to give you a background on me and long-term care insurance. There's other ways that we insure people now that are different than traditional long-term care insurance. Still have that available, but we actually don't have very many people with traditional long-term care anymore. We do, and I'm going to explain exactly. I'm going to show you other ways that we can do that. But on a personal note, so now you can imagine I'm working with all these people. and helping and known doing seminars like this, even in the 90s, I'm doing seminars on long-term care. And, and luckily I saw my parents, my mom and dad, and my mother-in-law and my father-in-law all had policies from joining. Well, my mom, we all have personal stories that I think this is what kind of gives me a passion about this. My mom, unfortunately, got cancer and never needed long-term care. She fought for 5 years and passed away at 70 years old. My father, was pretty healthy, ended up needing a bypass surgery, and he was 72 years old, and he came out great, came home, but a blood clot broke loose from the surgery, went to left his brain and gave him a massive stroke. So now he's 72, just had bypass surgery, and he's paralyzed on his left side. He's 72, I'm 42, and my sister is a few years older than me. My mom just passed away, same year. And so it's like, what are we going to do? He needs 24-hour care for as long as he's going to live. So he had a policy, a long-term care policy that was very usable. And so what we did is we managed his care for 9 years at home, 24-hour care. And then the last 3 years of his life, he did have 12 years after that stroke. We had him in a place called Sunrise Assisted Living, which was the best in town. All of it very expensive. But I always told my dad, I thanked him because of his planning, because he used the plan, because he saved money, and he bought that long-term care policy funding. The combination of that allowed my sister and I to take care of him the way he deserved to be taken care of. At home as long as possible, and then finally in assisted living. So throughout the night, you're gonna find that I'm going to use personal stories quite a bit because as I go through slides, it just comes back to me, and I just want to share that. And again, you probably all could get up here and talk about stories too. So the one thing I want you to leave here tonight with is that regardless, wherever your advisor is, and if somebody here at TV, we work as a team. So you'll have my services as part of your being an advisor. There's no charge for it or anything like that. Is that you should just plan. It doesn't have to be insurance. I'm going to show you some stuff that may not make any sense to you. That's fine. But you just got to have a plan. In other words, what would happen? Where's my kid? Because your kids are going to be involved. Even if you say, I don't want my kids to be involved, they are. That's my dad. Totally flipped. He's passed away now, but, all of a sudden I'm making all his financial decisions for him. He must have been dying. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. But that fast, your world changes. So I'm sorry if I get a little long-winded, but I think it's important to understand the history of long-term care. And then I like to throw in my personal story because you understand that I've lived it. I've had so many clients where I've helped with claims. And so I know, I know how it is to help people with paying for care. But then I experienced my dad's situation, which helped me in my business considerably. I would rather bypass that, but it was 12 years of dedication every day, and so it was worth it. So we're lucky here tonight to have a guest. Megan Velasquez is the new executive director of Valley Caregiver Resources. I was just telling Megan, I only wish I knew there was Valley Caregiver Resources in the San Joaquin Valley. I didn't know it. My sister didn't know it. We did everything on our own. They are a tremendous resource for this valley to help people that were in a situation like my family and in many other situations. So what I'm going to do is turn this microphone over to Megan and let her explain to you all the resources that are available.
Hi, everyone. I was telling Vince earlier, I present a lot on our services and what we do, and I had my whole presentation, kind of figured out. Then at my support group today, planning just kept coming up. and coming up and, you know, in different capacities because everyone's in different stages of their caregiving journey. And so I'm going to switch up how I'm going to present. So bear with me. But many of my caregivers attending our support group, like I said, they're in different phases. And as they're processing their different challenges that they're going through, one is deciding, okay, my wife's needing more and more care. I have to figure out, can I fulfill her needs? Do I need to move in with her to assisted living, sell our home? Do I need to just place her? What is that going to do to her progression with dementia, doing a big move? Another caregiver is simply trying to figure out, I have to give my husband 3 o'clock medicine today, and it's been a battle. He's refusing to take medication, and she's trying to navigate, how do I approach it? But again, regardless of how big the planning is, everyone's looking ahead. Everyone's trying to figure out what their next step is. And one of my caregivers finally looks and he's like, I'm not planning at all. It's too scary. I can't predict everything that's going to happen in the future. I'm going to live in the moment and I'm going to enjoy the time I have with my wife. And I looked at him and I said, you know, it is scary that the fear of the unknown can stop any of us dead in our tracks, whether we're caregiving or not. It's scary. And none of us can predict the future. There's a difference between trying to predict the future and preparing for it. And that's what we're here. And I think some of you are here today is trying to prepare for your future. We don't know what's going to happen, but are we ready for it if it does? Mind you, everyone in my group, they're in the thick of their caregiving journey already. So for them, they feel like, well, outside of planning what we're going to eat today, do I have any options? And I want you to know that you do. That's where Vince says, talk to him, talk to us, but know there are choices regardless of where you are in your journey. Most of the time, myself and my staff, we find caregivers already in the midst of the crisis. That's when they're calling us. You know, their caregiving, like Ben said, it comes unexpected. It's a stroke, it's a fall, it's a dementia diagnosis. I think our most common thing we got, well, mom's getting hip surgery or my loved one's getting hip surgery. They're only going to need to live with me for about 2 months and then we're good to go. Then they start living with you and it's like, I don't know if mom's feeding the dog every day. I don't know if, you know, our PG&E bill's getting paid and you're starting to notice those little changes. And then by the end of the 2 months, mom's not moving out and now you're a full-time caregiver. And what do you do with it? So Valley Caregiver Resource Center, we serve the 9 counties of the Central Valley from Kern to Stanislaus. And sorry, wrong way. We're made up of 4 different programs. We have our Caregiver Resource Program, our Oasis Adult Day Program. We have our Health Insurance Counseling and Advocacy Program. We'll call it HICAP. And we also have our Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. To dive into each program, our Caregiver Resource Program is just that. We focus on you as the caregiver. So when we have caregivers call and they're stating that they're caring for a loved one, we're going to turn the script back on them. How are you providing this care? How are you handling it? Do you feel you have the support you need to continue this care? And how we do that, you get assigned a family consultant and they'll guide you along the journey. We offer free education classes, free support groups, and we have different respite programs where we get grants from the state and we can help pay for someone to come in the home to give you a break. We're trying to help you keep your loved one aging in place. But without you, there is no aging in place. So we want to support you in that. And so that is our Caregiver Resource Program. We do family mediation. We will help pay for 1-hour legal or financial consultation. We work really well and closely with Vince and Thiesenduke are here. But again, I always tell families, if we don't know the answer, we know someone that does. And we try to simplify the caregiving journey. It's overwhelming. And we all have Google now, but how overwhelming is it when you look up even just adult day programs? It's like, oh, I have all these choices. And then you start calling and you come to realize, oh, we don't qualify for that. Oh, that's not for us. Oh, that's a different diagnosis. Oh, that's a different something else. And then you start to feel defeated. I don't have options. So we try to say, just call us. Let us figure out and find the options for you. Going into our Oasis Adult Day Program, we're an alternative for 24-hour skilled nursing care. And so what we can do is help bridge the gap to placement. Often, I have one caregiver specifically, her husband, it was safe for him to be home. She still had to work. He was a retired police officer and she worked 30 hours a week. She needed to work and it was fine until it wasn't. One day she came home. She's like, he's acting a little strange. Okay, maybe it's just an off day. We all have those. She went to give him his 4 o'clock medication and he had taken a week's worth of medication in one sitting. She immediately calls 911. He gets to the hospital. He needs his stomach pumped. Now, I'm a caregiver. She was aware of it. He has Parkinson's. But in that instant, life changed. I still have to work to make our financial needs, but he can no longer be left unattended. And the doctor had a very serious talk with her as well. And, coming to the conclusion, he can't be left alone. Her kids have families, they work. And so she's looking and she finds our Oasis Adult Day program. And I was running it at this time. And she came to me and she's like, Megan, he will never agree to come to this program. He is a retired police officer. He's a prideful man. The thought of needing help, there's no way. And so I told her, I said, just bring him. We'll get creative. We'll figure it out. So he comes and he sits, he's pleasant, but about 30 minutes into his 2-hour visit, he's like, can you call my wife? I'm going to go home. And I was like, well, what's going on? Where are you going to go home? And he's like, I don't belong here. I'm not one of them. And, I'm just like, you're right. You're not. You don't belong here. And I said, you're a retired police officer, right? And he's like, yeah. And I said, so a lot of people here don't feel safe. They have memory loss, something that you don't know anything about. And you can make them feel safe. They would feel so good knowing that a police officer was here. That's such a reassuring thing. And he looks and he's like, well, I don't have a badge. I don't, how are they going to know? And I said, I'll make you a badge. And he was like, well, no, I have a hat. And he's like, I'll wear my hat. And I'm like, perfect. So don't come here to attend, volunteer. Why don't you just come? And he's like, perfect. So we started out just 2 days a week. And he, would come volunteer. And it's been about 2.5 years. And if you were to show up on any day but Wednesday, he still wears his police cap. And he thinks he's working here. One day he came into my office and asked how much he was getting paid because he hadn't seen a check yet. And I let him know that it's direct deposit through his wife. He's also tried to serve a couple warrants to the restroom. But, again, we try to get creative with the approach. Yeah. On how to get your loved ones. So it's the day program is something that you feel or you might know someone that might consider and need this service. But you think they would never agree to it, give us a chance. We'll get creative. We can really try to figure out we had an eye doctor. He was a retired eye doctor. You have no idea how many pretend exams I got from him because it was like, you know what? Some days he'd walk in and he was fine. Other days I'm like, my eye's irritated. I need some help. And that's how we can get him to settle. The more my staff can get to know them, the more we can really give them purpose. And that's another thing that our day program does. It finds purpose for the care receiver. Oftentimes as caregivers, that's our purpose, to provide that care. So we have reason to get up every day, or maybe we're still working. It's our animals, it's grandkids. But what's their purpose? So then families are like, well, they just stare out the window. They're not really engaging. They don't want to get out of bed. And I'll ask them, why should they? My grandfather had dementia, and my aunt would often we were really close, and she was like, Megan, he won't listen. He doesn't do anything. And she came to stay the weekend with me. They're down in Bakersfield. And I said, we're going to role change. You're the care receiver and I'm the caregiver. And I'm going to show you what it's like a day in life. And we called him Popple. And I said, in Popple's life. And she's like, okay. So she gets up and I was like, go to the restroom. And she's like, well, I was going to get some water. I'm like, no, it's time to go to the restroom. Go. So she's like, okay. She goes to the restroom. I'm like, okay, good job. Let's get dressed. I'm not really ready to get dressed. No, that's for the day. It's good for you. Let's get dressed. And she's looking and she's like, okay. And, she's kind of starting to get it. And then I pour her decaf coffee. Now, mind you, coffee is a very serious thing in my family. And she was like, why is mine from there? And I said, well, you don't need that much caffeine. You urinate a lot. So I'm going to give you decaf and that will be better for you. And she's just like, and then she's like, okay, I'll get dressed now. I'm like, okay, I laid out your outfit. And I laid out shorts and a shirt, and she was like, it's cold. And I said, no, it's warm enough. That's what you're going to wear today. And she's like, okay. And I said, do you see how it feels just to be told all day long what you're going to do? Because you feel as the caregiver, it's easier if I decide, and this is the best thing. And at the day program, they have the luxury of independence. They have our program structure. We're not worried about them opening a cabinet that's going to get, into something dangerous or something risky. It's designed for them. So they're able to breathe and be free there. And one of our participants, she was like, And it's okay if you forget because none of us remember. And she's a little bit more aware of her diagnosis. But with that, it's just a safe space for one, the caregiver to get a break, and two, the care receiver to have some fun, rebuild connection with community, and find their purpose. Now, I will say this is our only program out of the 4 that has a cost. Our day program costs $13 an hour, which if you know anything about in-home care right now, you're lucky if it's $37 to about $45 an hour. So we try to make it as affordable as possible, but there is a fee associated with our day program. Next is our high cap program. So like Vince was saying, there's different Medicare options for you. What is great about high cap is they're free and they're unbiased. They're not selling plans. They are just there to counsel. So we have registered counselors that are certified by the state that can help guide you with your Medicare needs. I see families come in with grocery bags of empty prescription pills and says, okay, this is what I'm taking and we can't afford it. And, they'll be able to look at all the medications, find different plans, and figure out what is best for you. And whether it's the plan that you are working with already, or if we need to switch to your plans. They also help with scam and fraud. So they report to Sacramento. So it's really a common thing that we're seeing is seniors are getting calls and say, hey, you haven't applied for your new Medicare card. You need to apply for it. Give me your information. I'll do it for you. They give their information. That person has signed them up for something else. They get to their doctor. And the doctor's like, we no longer accept your plan. And they're like, well, I didn't change my plan. And it's like, yes, you did. So they can call our high cap department and they can help with any of that. They can also help with unsafe hospital discharges. Often the hospital, they're in the business of trying to get you out and it's not always safe. That same family that I was talking about, the retired police officer, he was recently hospitalized and she's like, Megan, they're telling me if I don't get him out tomorrow, they're discharging him because he's stable now. Mind you, he can't walk and he's 6'3" and she's shorter than I am. And she was like, but he's okay. And they're saying, if I don't, I'll have to pay out of pocket for the remainder of his stay. And she's like, what do I do? And again, I'm not the expert in that, but I know someone that is. And so I walked her over to our high cap department and they were able to help talk to the hospital, say the right words, the right things, and they got it figured out. So our high cap department is really a great program for the community. And then our last program is our long-term care ombudsman. This is a volunteer-based program. And so they go to all of the skilled nursing, assisted living, licensed care facilities, and they advocate for the residents. What's unique about this program is one, they are not licensing. So they have different, they can't cite the places, but they investigate and they work closely with community care licensing, but they also are resident advocates. So sometimes family get frustrated because they're like, Megan, I called ombudsman and I told them that my mom's not doing enough activities at the program or, the assisted living. And when they went out there, they didn't do anything about it. She needs to get out of her room. Well, they're resident advocates. They talk to mom and mom says, I don't want to hang out with those people. And she didn't want to. And so there was nothing that they can do. And so often there's a miscommunication there. People think that they're advocates of what the caregiver thinks best, but really they're there to advocate for the resident. And sometimes it is hard and their hands are tied because they're not mandated reporters. There may be an abuse allegation, but when they talk to the care receiver, they're like, no, my niece isn't stealing my money. I'm giving it to her. And it's like, well, you don't now have the money. So what are you going to do? Oh, it's okay. She needs it more. And we know there's financial abuse, but because she told the ombudsman, no, they can't do anything. And there's workarounds that we try to work with and try to get another family involved or different reporting avenues. But they go out and do once a month unannounced visits, and they really try to get to know the residents, see how they're feeling, how they're doing. They get notified of any new transfers from skilled nursing to a residential care facility, and they try to show up or hospital to skilled nursing and let the patients know we're here. Here's our number. I had a woman, we had a telephone reassurance program, and she was a regular caller of ours. And she was talking to me one day and she's like, my husband passed 3 years ago. I have family, but no one's come since my husband passed. I haven't had a visitor in 3 years. And already, my heart's broken. And she was like, but I don't know where my social security check's going. And she's like, he handled the finances And she was like, and now it's been 3 years and I don't know. And so I told her, I'm like, let's get with the ombudsman. And so I said, are you open to me helping you start a claim? And she's like, absolutely. Thankfully, the ombudsman got involved. There was no financial fraud. The assisted living was getting her social security. It was handled properly, but she didn't know. So the ombudsman arranged, we're going to do monthly meetings, when her check comes, where the money's going, and her getting a breakdown of what that looks like. So she understands. And then again, now she knows. And our ombudsman, every time they go out, they make sure they go and see her. And so at least she has one person once a month that is not within the home. So this is a volunteer program. So if anybody is interested in volunteering or just know someone, I always even tell my families before you're placing, know about our ombudsman. Go and ask questions, because sometimes you feel like you're signing your rights away when you place your loved one and you really are still in control. I tell caregivers, whether you're caring for someone within your home or within another address, you're still their main caregiver. And so with that, let me flip through my pages here. So much joy found in caregiving, but it's often overshadowed by the overwhelm and the stress that's put on there. And typically, the best way to avoid that stress or decrease it is by planning ahead. Now, I know many of you may not be in the exact situation as my caregivers, as they're trying to navigate their day-to-day, how to administer medications or to place or not to place. But I can say they have been in your shoes. They weren't always caregivers. They weren't planning on it. One day they were just average people and something happened. Someone took medication. They got a Parkinson's diagnosis. Someone fell. Someone had a stroke. And so in my support group today, knowing I was going to have this presentation, I asked them, I said, if you guys could rewind to before you became caregivers, what's something you would change? And as they sat there and they thought, some said, oh, I'd go on more vacations. So, I wouldn't fight the small things, or I would cherish the little moments. But the mass majority said I would plan ahead or plan differently. And there's such a difference in the caregivers that walk through our door, crisis or not. The ones that have planned have options, and that in alone helps you breathe. And the ones that don't, not that we're not able to help navigate or guide them through it, their options are limited, which puts more pressure on the caregiver. So I'm not the expert in long-term care. That's why we have events here. But my two takeaways for today is one, listen to him, because two, he lived it, and hearing his testimony in a lot more depth that you guys did, it really is a true testimony of how long-term care helps people. But then also just know, regardless of where you are on your journey, if I see mom slipping or I'm already in it, know that Valley Caregiver Resource can help you and help simplify that journey. So thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Megan. Don't worry, Megan brought plenty of information, pamphlets, and I also have a handout for you too. That would be
Second here. I'm just sitting back up.
Okay, so I have this presentation. Believe me, I am not going to go through all the slides because we covered it. And it's it's produced by an insurance company, so there's a lot of sales, reasons why you should buy long-term care, all that, and so I'm going to go through that part quickly. But what I am going to focus on is kind of what kind of what Medicare does cover, what it doesn't cover. Talk about Medicaid a little bit, and then I'm going to get into the types of policies that are available in case that fits in your plan. Okay, we're good. Again, and I'll touch on that more as we get in. But the main thing is when you're working with your financial advisor and you're looking at your retirement goals and your retirement plan, is you just identify, okay, what happens if we need long-term care? How are we going to pay for it? What asset are we going to use? What income? And so it could mean not necessarily buying insurance, but just identifying how you're going to pay for it and feeling comfortable with that you're not going to run out of money or what have you. But also it could mean maybe partially insuring, and so there's a lot goes into it. It's not any answers here tonight other than showing you what's available and maybe what to talk to your advisor about. Okay, so again, basically what this is saying is that if you're 65 years old, there is over a 50% chance you're going to be in a nursing home. Now, that's what the statistics are. And as you can see, more and more people, are getting older because of us baby boomers. And the cost on average for a couple is about $344,000. I think of that, and I think of how much we spent on my dad. I mean, well over $1 million. Well, that's not necessarily normal, but we always overachievers. We do more. And then it just talks about, we insure a bunch of other stuff. Obviously, our home, our car, odds of going to the hospital, and really none of it compares to, it's not really if we're going to need help. It's the question is how long. That's really what it is. You're going to need help, but it could only be maybe a week, or it could be 10 years. You just don't. This is huge. The impact on families. I am blessed because I have a sister that's unbelievable. Also was a stay-at-home mom. Kids were older when my father got sick. And so we worked as a team. I was working obviously full time. And she was there managing caregivers at home all the time, every day. I'd go home before I went home, I'd go to my dad's place and check in. I did all the finances. I mean, it was a team effort. Caregivers, because we hired them ourselves because it was more affordable. We did all the due diligence and all that. But when they didn't show up, guess who spent the night? Me. I took care of my dad. And man, him and I got the biggest fights ever. So it's a family affair. It really is. But we wanted to keep him home. We did. So that's what we did. Yeah, we already talked about this. We're aging. There's going to be more people over the age of 85, more and more. Just people are living longer and people are getting older, which means people are going to need more care because we're living longer. So we've got to plan for that. Are you prepared financially? This is what we're talking about. Just planning all your planning for something that we don't want to have happen. It's part of your overall financial plan. So personal care, we think of it as older folks, but as you can see, there's several things, different types of injuries or accidents that could happen to people in their 50s, 40s, 60s. So it's not just necessarily for folks in their 80s, in the late 70s and 90s. So really, this is what I stress more than anything is that, long-term care is usually a progression. You usually start at home as long as you can. Some that's longer than others. And then from there, we try to go to assisted living. I can remember growing up when every corner had gas stations. Well, now every corner has assisted living centers. And we have residential care facilities for the elderly. Those are the homes where you can put 6 people in. I've talked about my dad, but also both my in-laws, they had divorced. My mother-in-law lived with us for 20, 25, 30 years when she got dementia. And we ended up we found one of those little homes that were near us that took care of memory people for 6 people. And that was wonderful. The cost back then, she passed in like 2018. We were only paying like $4,000 a month. Right. So that was a blessing. But she had a long-term care policy from John Hancock that she tried to drop several times, and I told her, no, I'll pay for it. I'll pay for it. And she paid for it. And we didn't pay $1. My father-in-law, now he lived in Southern California. He had remarried, luckily to a younger woman, and she was our caregiver. She was awesome. But she hired somebody in her policy, the policy in my father paid for that. So again, we paid for none of it. So of my wife's parents and my parents, we had 3 out of 4 use their long-term care policies 100%, all of them, which is again unusual, but it was a blessing for us. You know, this is where we don't want to try not to go. I mean, I think most people end up ending in assisted living, but there are situations where you have to go to a level 3 actual nursing. And you know, that's just usually definitely towards the end of life. The cost, Megan touched on it. If you go through a home health care agency, it's about $30 to $40 an hour. They do wonderful work. Very, you know, they manage those people. If they can't, they call in sick. They have someone else come. You don't have to worry about doing it. So I mean, there's a lot of benefits to that. Rather than you do it all yourself. But then, so that's, you know, that's pretty extensive. Assisted living centers, like I said, for my mother-in-law, we were paying $4,000 a month, but for my dad, because he was at Sunrise, which was one of the most expensive, and he probably should have been in a nursing home because of the care he needed, but they loved him and they found a way to keep him in there. But we were paying $7,600 a week for him to be there. You know, and so it's pretty expensive. It's well over now $100,000 a year. Well, okay. So what's Medicare do? So for Medicare to pay anything, you have to be in the hospital 3 days. And then from there, they'll cover skilled care in a skilled rehab center from 0 to 20 days. They'll pay 100%. Okay. Then, if you still are considered skilled care, now skilled care means that you has to be an RN there 24 hours, a doctor on call. You have to be progressing. You have to be getting better every day, having therapy. You're getting better. Once they think you're kind of plateaued, they'll change you to intermediate care, of which then Medicare pays nothing. And then custodial care, and then Medicare pays nothing. So you're probably only going to get about 2 weeks out of Medicare. Is really what my experience from all my clients, a couple weeks. But if they do, and my dad, because he was so, his stroke was pretty bad, he got into 22, he went all the way to 100 days. But he had a Medicare supplement. And so there's a copayment from 21 to 100 days. Now it's $209.50 a day. And so the Medicare supplement will pay that if you're skilled care. So the most you're going to get between Medicare and your Medigap insurance. And it goes the same if you have an Advantage plan. In other words, on Medicare, I don't want to get into Medicare, but if you give your Medicare to a private insurance company, you have an Advantage plan, they cover you the same way. You're not going to get past 100 days, and it's only going to be if it's skilled care. So you can't rely on it. Medicaid, which is, you know, Medicaid is Medi-Cal here in California. They've changed that recently. It used to be you had to spend your assets down for a single person to $2,000, and for a married couple, you leave the spouse at home. They would let you keep, at the time, I think it was like $120,000, but you'd have to spend your assets down to the $120,000. Then they would put the person that's in the nursing home or assisted living. Well, they don't pay for assisted living, but in a nursing home, they would put them on Medi-Cal and pay for it. There are some home care that Medi-Cal will pay. But they also got rid of the asset. There is no limit. You can have millions of dollars. And you can qualify for Medi-Cal, but you can't have any income. So all your income, if you have millions of dollars, you're going to have income, even if it's passive. That income has to go towards your cost of care. So, if you're somebody that has a small, income from your 401k and Social Security, you're pretty much going to have to spend all that. And then if you're in an assisted, they may cover you in assisted living. Again, they didn't used to, but now it's a possibility. But if you're in a nursing home, or if they approve assisted living, then all you could keep is $35. And all the rest has to go, you know, so here's the thing. We had, my sister would, talk to her friends and they, and she would complain about how much money we're spending. And, I've lived this with so many people. My sister, my dad, and she said this, so-and-so said that we could get rid of all the assets and have the state pay for it. Why are we having to pay for it? I said, oh, really? I said, okay, well, let's go for a ride. I said, okay, we got to find somewhere that accepts Medicare. Okay. I said, okay, here's a place. I'm not putting him in there. There's no way. I said, but don't listen to your friends. Okay, because we're not doing that. We're going to keep them here, at Sunrise. So there are ways you could talk to elder law attorneys, and there are ways when it used to be asset driven. And I'm sure there are ways now. There's smart guys, people where you can manage to get on Medicare. So I'm not talking against it. I'm just saying it's a personal preference on kind of where you want to care and what you want to do. You want the state to pay for it and kind of go by their guidelines, or you want to be independent and pay for it yourself. You have a question?
And just to comment on that, the other thing with that, if you want to let the state pay for it, there's no guarantee they're going to be in this town you are. It's wherever there's an opening.
Wherever they have a bid. So there's the Medi-Cal bid. Now, if you happen to be a private pay and you're there, every nursing home, again, we're not talking about assisted living, but every nursing home has to have so many Medi-Cal beds. And so if they're full, they're not going to take you because they get way more money on private pay than they do on Medi-Cal. But if you're there already and you're paying and you qualify, then they're not going to kick you out. You would be able to stay there. But you would have to have paid yourself for a number of years. Okay, so again, assisted living, Medicare doesn't cover, Medigap, Medicaid, and some instances. Pretty much you're covering all that yourself. Okay. Why look at long-term care insurance now? And mostly it's as I deal with this, it's the younger you are, the least expensive it's going to be, and the more apt you're going to qualify health-wise. They don't give this to folks that need this, that need care. You have to be healthy, relatively healthy. You could have high blood pressure that's managed by medication. And you have to have you have to be managed. If you have anything that they think is going to give you a stroke, or if you have any memory, don't ever kid with your doctor and say, "Oh yeah, I'm forgetful." They put that in your records. If you ever want to buy long-term care insurance, forget it. They're not giving it to you. So it's really this one. It's one of these things you look at it, you decide yes or no, but don't procrastinate. How many times have I showed people plans, and they say, "Yeah, okay, we're going to think about it," and I said, "Okay." I get a call a year or two later. Yeah, we want to buy that insurance. I said, I asked, "Well, did anything happen to make you do that?" "Yeah, I had this little TIA, little mini stroke, this or that." I think it's too late. So important questions: where are long-term care services provided? Any policy you buy now is going to cover you no matter where you're at. As long as you're buying a tax qualified plan based on that 1996 Kennedy Castlebaum Act. And I don't care who you buy it from or what you do. If you want me to look at it, I'll tell you if it's what it is. Because that's, you don't have to worry about that if you're buying the right time. And, what effect will it have on the family and your retirement strategy? Again, we run simulations and we put you in a nursing home and we see what kind of stress that puts you on your income. Tell you, well, maybe I don't need to try to cover all of the costs today of long-term care, but maybe I get a portion to help me supplement in case I need it. And when I show you some products, you might think, well, that's not a bad idea because you don't lose the premium because it's life insurance based is what we sell now, or annuity based. So someone's going to get paid the money. Might be your kids, might be the nursing home, but are caregivers. But you're going to get a return on your money, which is I like. And we already talked about this. We insure everything else. So look at long-term care insurance. So kind of the planning process. Again, develop a strategy to offset the risk. Thinking of your family and just kind of everything that you might, that might go into if you need deep care. Would you try to stay home? Who would help you? All that kind of stuff. Or you might have a favorite assisted living center on the wall that you want to go through something. And then implement the strategy, whether it's insurance, 100% self-funding, or a combination of all of them. And so basically what we try to do is if you have long-term care insurance, we create another asset for you. It's just another asset in your overall portfolio that we're going to take out. We're going to take out as you need care. We're going to take it out of that asset on whether it be a monthly or daily basis. And so from that pool of assets, it'll cover any of these places: assisted living, home care, nursing home, care coordination services. We coordinate all that out of the policy. So okay, it's the slide I was wanting to get to. So these are all the types of long-term care coverage that you can buy now. The first one here is the traditional that my parents and my in-laws bought. And so there, you pay the premium just like you would your health insurance or any other insurance. With that premium, it creates a pool of money. It's going to cover you so much per day or per month if you qualify for care. And once that pool of money's gone, then you're not going to have coverage anymore. But you got a return on your premium. Two downsides is if you don't need long-term, you end up not needing long-term care, or if you only need it for a short period of time, whatever premium you pay is the cost of insuring yourself. Just like on anything else, our home, our car, or anything like that. It's just the cost of insuring yourself. And that's one thing. But the big thing is now, I told you earlier, is that the premiums can go up. If the insurance company, wherever they sold that they call class of policy to, if they have so much in claims, they could go to the state and the state can approve increases in premium. And so what's happening now, the people that I sold policies to in the 90s and 2000s, early 2000s, is they're getting these letters where their premium is going up. And they can't afford, now they can't afford it because it's lifetime premium. And so but they do give options of how we can reduce the benefits to keep the premium the same. It's just, I don't like it. I don't feel good about it, but we do it. And I never try to replace it because you can't make up all those years of age or health. So that's the downfall of traditional long-term care. But if you want to see quotes on that, I got them. I can do it. This is what we sell mostly. What this is a hybrid life and long-term care hybrid. What this is a base long-term care, base life insurance. For a couple, it's what we call survivorship or second to die. So it covers both the husband and wife, and you actually don't even have to be married. It could be a daughter and a mother, as long as there's not more than 25 years difference in age. I've done that. They're covering the same policy. And so it's a base life insurance. It's not a big life insurance death benefit. It's pretty much designed to be a return of premium. So what happens is if you never need long-term care, you pay the premium. You could pay a single premium. Let's say you have money that's in low interest bearing accounts. You're pretty liquid. And so what they'll do there is just transfer some money from this pocket to this pocket, create this long-term care policy that has a life insurance feature that says that if you don't need this or don't need all of it, then your beneficiaries will get that as a death benefit. So you're not, you could be out some opportunity cost if you're investing it and getting a better rate of return than, you know, what the spread is and the premium and the life insurance. But it's a way to get, for you to feel like you're not wasting your money if you don't need long-term care. But once that's gone, then there's a long-term care rider that's true long-term care insurance. And we have one company that has unlimited lifetime benefits for both the husband and the wife. So no matter how long one or both of you need it, it's going to pay for you. That's what most of our clients, when it fits their budget and fits their overall, they like that plan. They know the premium's not going to go to waste, but they know they're going to be covered no matter what. Very rarely do we try to cover 100% of the cost now or in the future. We blend it in with their other income. So we're making sure that we can do it. It's too costly to try to cover everything. The other one here is what I own. I was a lot younger. My wife and I bought John Hancock life insurance policies because I wanted a bigger death benefit, mostly for my wife if something happens to me. But if I need long-term care, we can start paying, we could pay down that death benefit at 4% per month. So if I have $1 million, I could get up to $40,000 a month. I wouldn't need $40,000 a month, but you could get the percentage of that death benefit tax-free until it's all gone. You know, and so that's another thing. You can buy individual life policies and put long-term care riders on. Okay. Lastly, annuities. So in 2006, there was the Pension Recovery Act, and what they said is that for companies that want to put a certain provision in their annuities, they'll allow you to access the annuity tax-free as long as you qualify for long-term care. So that means, as you know, with an annuity, a deferred annuity, so many people buy them because they think they're going to use them for income, but they don't. And so what they have is a big taxable gain on the annuity that they usually, you know, if they're going to leave it to their kids are going to have to pay all the tax on the gain. Well, if you have an annuity like that and you don't think you need it for your income, you can put it into an annuity that can be used for long-term care and it comes out tax-free. Now, if you never need long-term care, the kids are still going to have to pay tax on the gain. But if you do need it for long-term care, at least you can use that asset and not pay taxes. Also, you can add riders on that. They'll either they'll cover you unlimited lifetime if you use up all the annuity, or for maybe 4 years more or 6 years more. So I use those when people have existing annuities. I usually don't tell people, let's put your money in the annuity and then we'll start one. But if they already had one, it's a good solution. Although it is a lot easier to qualify for the annuity-based long-term care than it is the life. Okay, so if you have some health issues, that might be an alternative. Okay, I talked a lot. Any questions?
Yeah. Okay. On the fixed or indexed annuities. So for an example, I was an educator, so tax shelter annuities, would that qualify?
You can't use a qualified account.
Okay.
Now, what you could do, you have to pay taxes on the gain, is 100% of it. If it's pre-tax, what you could do is you don't have to pay these. You don't have to pay either one of any of these single premium. You could pay it over 10 years. You could pay it over 20 years. You could pay it all years. And so if someone has an IRA, and that's not money they're going to need for their retirement planning, what we'll do is we won't obviously just take that money out and pay taxes on all of it. We'll set it up over a period of time. So you're just paying taxes on a little bit of it. So that's what we'll need to do for that. You can't get away from paying taxes. Good question.
Okay, but I have another question too. Okay, I have a long-term care policy that I got for over 30 years. I got it back in the 90s. You did not sell it to me, but my financial guy sold it to me years ago.
30 years, so about 1995.
Right in there. Yeah. Yeah.
What company?
New York Life.
Oh, it's pretty good policy.
Yes, it is.
More than half, you know the policy, you know it's good. Yeah,
Well, yeah, lots have happened in that 30 years. I mean, because now, like you said, the state now can go and, or not the state, the insurance company can go and say, hey, we're not making as much money as we used to. These people aren't dying like we thought they were going to.
they're using the policies.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're losing their shorts.
they are. And so they have a way to make sure that they don't. But it is, what I'm paying for my policy currently, it's not at all what I started out.
Oh,
But you know that story. Okay, but here's my question. It's been bothering me for a while. Because I do plan to use my long-term. And I plan to use it beyond what I've paid into it. I mean, but I don't know if I'm doing it or not. Because by the time I need my long-term care, I will need several, I'm sure, of the daily
activity.
activities. Okay, so that means it's going to be incumbent on one of her daughters,
Mhm.
to figure out how to arrange this. Because if I understand correctly, and maybe it's just my policy, we pay for it in advance and then we bill and get reimbursed.
It's a great question. So there's two different types of benefits. One's a reimbursement, which most of them are. But then there's also indemnity, which is more expensive. But you don't have to turn in receipts. It's not reimbursed. They just, if you qualify, they give you all your benefit. They give you all whatever benefit you qualify. And you can pay with anything. On the ones that are reimbursement, most of them don't allow you to pick up family member.
Correct. But that doesn't mean that the family member, which is why I'm glad you came today, because I was going to ask you if your company provides that kind of service for the caregiver or whoever the individual is that's going to be in charge of me, as an example. Because because I'm be assured by the time I need that, there's no way I can fill out all those forms, make sure I gather up all the bills, get it where it needs to go, to get reimbursement.
Yeah, so one, our day program takes long-term care. So I have 2 participants currently that uses their long-term care plan to pay for their time at the day program. And we went back and forth because long-term care, they're like, okay, well, we need your, what we call as our individual needs assessment of, let's say you as the care receiver. They ask for certain documentation from us as the receivers of the check. And then at that point, we send them monthly invoices. I have to send them a monthly calendar of activities. There's different requirements. So as far as the Oasis Adult Day program, utilizing that, yes. As far as, let's say, a daughter's having a hard time navigating this and they come to us, are we going to be able to help her? Maybe, maybe not, just depending on, one of my counselors in high cap or whatever. But like I said, if we don't directly have someone within the agency, we work with community partners that we're going to say, hey, I have someone, they have this care, policy that they're trying to activate or utilize and they're having difficulties. Can we sit down and have a consultation? And whether they come to the office, we bring them here, whatever that looks like, and we'll help them navigate it.
On a monthly basis, there are people that just do this for
Oh, good.
a job now
I think that's a great
that
one.
you can hire
Yeah.
that will do that for you.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
What I do for my clients and anybody that they send to me is I explain to them the process. I get on the phone with them and I have them send the claim kit and I help them fill out the first time. Now, I can't do that monthly.
No, right.
But I will do that for people just as my way of giving back. There's no charge for that. And I'm doing it for a long time.
You said there's a claim kit. Okay, because this intrigues me, and maybe it's conversation, not of the group, but I don't plan to need this for maybe ever, but 20 years, but yet I know that this is a gap in personally my care, and I figure it's a gap in my care, it's a gap in lots of other people's care. So, and I'm guessing that the need is going to be greater and not less.
There's no doubt. People are aging, more and more people.
Yeah,
So you know what? We'll do some research for you. I'll find, I guess, some names of people. Of course, you don't need it now. you
no,
know,
I don't.
But so that could change over the years.
Yeah.
But when the time comes, someone you're tied here to Thies and Duker, there's a lot of young guys here. You know, I'll be gone. But
Yeah.
Tom, someone like Tom or somebody is gonna figure out the answer. Yes.
Can your long-term care insurance pay for your fiduciary agent or whoever's gonna be paying your bills for you? Because I,
If it's an indemnity, yes. If it's reimbursement, no.